All right, so it looks like everybody who's in has their audio going, and so we're just so excited to have you today. You are joining the NAL or Native American Language at ED new grant orientation. We're going to be going over some things, but before we get into the meat of our time today, I'm going to read a little disclaimer. This presentation was produced under the U.S. Department of Education contract number GS00F115CA with Synergy Enterprises Incorporated. The views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the positions or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. No official endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education of any product, commodity, service, or enterprise mentioned herein is intended or should be inferred. That's our normal disclaimer. Let's get into what we'll be covering today. Again, we really are very excited to have you join us today. And we want to just welcome you. We are going to be going over a bunch of content that's really, the goal is to really orient you to your new grant and some of the beginning processes of managing your grant. And the intention is really to get you off to a good start, and so that you can begin with success and then end with success at the end of your grant. So for today, we're going to be going over some things that you're going to need to know to get started. We're going to review your measures that matter, and then also talk a little bit about your budget and how we can align it for your success, and then also provide some resources and upcoming events. But before we get into all of that, it's my pleasure to introduce you to your Native American Language at ED Program Officer, Dr. Donna Sabas-Burns. Hi, Donna.
Hello, thank you, Alani. I feel so special. Welcome, everybody. We are so happy to have you for the kickoff for this very important grant program, and congratulations to this entire FY24 cohort for the Native American Language Program at OIE. It's such a great time to be in Native language programming, and the work that's being done currently with our own language grantees with NAL and beyond. It's amazing. And I know Secretary Cardona recently started his bus tour with the point of being multilingualism being a superpower. And this is very much true as it is with our NAL grants as well. And we look forward to seeing the wonderful, wonderful work that will be coming out of these grants, having looked at all of the applications and seeing all of the different prospects of ideas and activities and goals and objectives. It's just amazing. And so I know I see some familiar names, and some of which are, I think your grant is in its final last days. And so what perfect timing. And I also see some new ones. I see some current. So, and I see some new, the new faces is always fun too. So like Alani said, this time is in two-part. Never have we done the orientation before the end of the fiscal year, because normally we're pulling our hair out trying to finish up all of our money getting out the door. But we were able to start this, how many weeks early? So that's a win. We've been working on this program since I was looking back since last November. Wow. And it took a while for this to come into fruition. So believe me, trust me, it's very exciting. So I could go on and talk about Native language stuff, and I'm going to stop. But thank you for being here. You'll walk away with some great resources. We have a follow-up workshop. And again, these are tools to not just for the new folks, but also for our current folks who are familiar with some of our tools. They've been revamped a bit and streamlined for user-friendly, to be even more user-friendly than they were. So everyone has something that they'll be able to take back with them to get started on their program. So with that, I'm turning it back over to Alani, and look forward to the conversation. And sorry I took so long.
Awesome. Thank you, Donna. Yeah, it has been a long time coming, and so we're super excited to have you folks here. I'm Olani Lilly. I'm with the OIETA Technical Assistance Team, and I get to work with the NAL grantees, which is my favorite. You're really my heart. I uh, worked and was an administrator at a Native Hawaiian language immersion charter school here in Hawaii. We were a K-12 school. And so getting to work with you folks around your language and seeing all the innovative and impactful work that you're doing is really close to my heart. So I'm really, I appreciate being able to continue to learn from you folks and also provide maybe some of what I've learned to help you along. So all of that said, let's get into some of the basics around starting your grant. And what I'd like to start with is this thing called your grant award notification. Now, when we sent out the reminder uh, email, we asked you to bring your GAN. It's for short, it's called GAN, but it's really your grant award notification. Um, this is what it looks like. And so we're going to walk through the different pieces just so you understand what are the different pieces of this. This is a very foundational document that you want to make sure not only that you have, but that maybe some other people within your organization also hold on to, because throughout the years, you're going to want to refer back to this. And you want to make sure that whether, maybe bring on new team members or maybe you change positions, that the next person coming into the project director position has access to that. So let's go through this document. So again, is the official document that states the amount and conditions of your award. It helps to identify any administrative changes around the grant award. And so there may be through the life of your grant, there will be new GANs that pop up for you, particularly at the beginning of every year, that will provide you information. And they can change over the years. And so you really want to make sure you're paying attention to that. The program officers usually sign the GANs electronically. And we'll talk about, if you don't have your GANs, how you can access that. Actually, before I go on, if anybody in the chat can just let us know whether you have access to your, if you do not have access to your GAN, if you could just let us know so that we can follow up with you after this session. Each time it's electronically signed GAN is processed, an email will be automatically sent to the grant recipient, and in particular, your project director. And so it's very crucial to keep your project director information in the system up to date. The people who will, again, be receiving this email are your project director, and also your certifying official, which is your authorized representative. Only electronically signed GANs can be viewed in this system called G6, formerly known as G5, and only the project director and certifying official listed on the award will be able to access that. The names and emails of the addresses of those individuals are listed on the award, must match exactly the names and emails addressed in their G6 account. And so I know some of you, we've been in contact, and you've been in contact with Donna to get, one missed letter in an email for your project director can not give you access to your GANs. And so again, if you have any trouble accessing G6 and getting your GAN, let us know so that we can make sure you have access to that. So let's go through the blocks. So in block 1, you have your recipient name, and you can see that example there. And then in block 2, you have your award information. And so a critical number is your PR number. That is really your award number. It's something that is helps us identify your organization. And so when you communicate with your program officer, with Donna, or even with the technical assistance team, this is the number you want to make sure you put in your subject line so we can make sure we know what contract you're talking about. Also, there's an action number there, the action type, and you can see that action type is new. So that means that this is a new grant. And what is the award type? It is a discretionary grant award, which means there was an NIA, or a notice inviting applications. You had to submit your application, it was reviewed, and then you were awarded. So it's a discretionary versus other types of funding that the Department of Education provides. In block 3, you have your project staff. So as you can see there, the recipient project director will be their name, their contact information, including their phone number and email. Those are very critical pieces of information because, like I said earlier, when doing business with OIE, Donna will be reaching out to the project director. If that is not up to date in your GAN or in G6, then that can hinder you from getting the work you need to get done and being able to communicate with Donna on various aspects. And so we want to make sure we keep that up to date. You can see there too, below your information is Donna's contact information. It has her email, so you can always reach out to her. Again, the project director can reach out to her. And also there's some information there regarding your hotline for payment and that contact information. And then in block 4, you can see the project title. It would be the name that was entered in the approved application. And then on the bottom is any key personnel. Again, that would be information regarding your project director. By the way, as I go through here, if you have any questions, just go ahead and put that in the chat or raise your hand and you can unmute and ask your question. Moving on to block 6. So these are your award periods. So the maximum amount of years for this new grant is 3 years. And so the ending of this grant period would be 9/30/2027. And I haven't been able to read through everybody's to see if everybody did 3 years, but 3 years is the maximum amount. Also, you can see next to those budget periods, the amount that was awarded for each year. Moving on to block 7, you have authorized funding. Again, it takes into consideration, sorry, wait, hold on, something popped up on my screen. It takes into consideration the various availability of funds. It tells you exactly how much the award is for the first budget period. You want to make sure you check this number. We're going to be coming back as we look at your budget to see if anything is shifted or changed from your application, and maybe you might consider submitting a budget revision. The number, wait, sorry, I'm sorry. The number listed next to the performance period is the total authorized amount over the life of the grant. However, it is important to look at the specific budget period because changes can be made to the actual allocated amount in years to come. So again, you'll be receiving these GANs at every new year. And so you really want to make sure you're checking this box 7, and there will be opportunities to adjust your budget as it relates to the amount in box 7. Now we're moving on to block 8. So this block contains administrative information, including your newly assigned unique entity identifier, or UEI. I'm sure you had to acquire that when you were submitting your grants.gov. And this UEI is used to track how federal dollars are allocated. The UEIs, as I'm sure you folks know, were automatically assigned to your organization when you, prior to actually submitting it through grants.gov. Please ensure that your organization renews its registration prior to the expiration date. So you always want to make sure, whether it's in sam.gov, that you are keeping all of your information up to date as it relates to your organization. And that includes your UEI. Block 8 also references the federal regulations that all grantees must follow. These regulations include EDGAR and the Uniform Guidance for Federal Awards. Now, we do provide links, and we'll get to that later in a resource that we're going to provide that you can connect to EDGAR and Uniform Guidance. Just a FYI, the Uniform Guidance has gone through a revision, and we have provided the updated links. And so all the links you have in your resources are updated to reflect the recent changes or the upcoming changes. Actually, October 1st, I think it'll officially changes, but you have the links for that. A key detail to note in Block 8 is the attachments. You may or may not have specific attachments listed in Block 8. The attachments listed pertain to specific actions for your award. So for example, an attachment 4 is related to indirect costs. If you have this attachment, then you likely need to provide some information regarding your organization's indirect cost rate. You may not have an attachment 4 listed in your GAN. It really depends on the conditions on each grantee. Another example of an attachment you might see, some of you may have attachment number 7 or attachment 7. You receive this attachment if the amount awarded to your grant is lower than the amount that you proposed in your approved budget. And so you want to check that, and that would then definitely require you to submit a change in your budget. You and your program officer can discuss the attachments listed in your section of your GAN at any time. You can always contact Donna if you have any questions regarding those attachments.
And just a quick plug, I will be reaching out to each program officer to have what we call a post-award conference. And if you fall in that, and all of you will have that chance to go over any questions to make sure that you have everything you need and all your questions that you need. So just letting you know.
Awesome. And then we're into block 10. And sorry, what am I? Block 9. Block 9, this is your legislative and fiscal data. This really references the legislation that authorizes the grant funding. And so again, it provides you the title of your program and then the funding year, the award year, and you can see there is 2024. So you are in the award year of 2024 for this new grant. You also see the amount there, as well as the CFDA code. And then moving on to block 10, terms and conditions. So in this block, it's similar to block 8. It will list any terms and conditions specific to your grant. Sometimes if you have multiple grants with the Office of Indian Education, you are required to submit a plan on how you're going to manage multiple grants. And so that is an example of what you may see in block 10. If you have any questions about that, again, you can contact Donna, and I'm sure it'd be good to really go over this. And so when you have your one-on-one with Donna, if you have any questions about what that plan would look like, what you need to submit with for your indirect costs, whatever the conditions are, you can go over that with Donna during your one-on-one. Sorry, Donna, I'm making your agenda. Sorry. So how do you gain access to all of this? G6 is how you should be receiving your information, all the official information for your grant. We have that link right there below. If one of our TA team wouldn't mind putting that link in the chat so you can access that. This is where you're going to be submitting, not only receiving information, but also submitting your annual performance report. And so it's very important for you to have access to this as a project director, to have access to this. Only the project director can have access, as well as your fiscal person, the person who is doing the drawdowns for your grant. and your authorized representative. If you have any problems with the system, so I know some of you are working with the help desk right now, here is the information that you can contact. So for the help desk for G6 is really for technical issues as it relates to you being able to access all the information in that system. If you have any program questions, that is really questions that you can either direct to the technical assistance team or definitely Donna to get feedback and direction on. Anything technical related to G6, you want to contact their help desk because we don't know how to run the G6 system. And so here's how you can begin to gain access. You want to be able to have a username. You can go in and create a username with your excuse me, your email address. You will set your own password. It does have a two-factor authentication that you'll need to utilize, and it'll walk you through all that entire process. Also, you want to use the G6 menu and buttons. You don't want to hit the back and forward button because if you do, as you're navigating in G6, if you do, it will kick you out of the system altogether. Now, if you're a project director, your access is primarily to be able to access your program, your annual performance report, as well as your GAN. You do not have access to do drawdowns of funds. That would be held by your fiscal representative. However, it is really, I don't want to say, it's important for you to be able to manage and know and track your spending. And so Intune is going to upload this view only document, which if you complete it and email it to that email at the bottom, you will be able to have access to see only, it's a view only, the drawdowns that have occurred for your grant. If you don't have this view only access, then you won't be able to see it. Again, it's a very important piece of information as you go through the year and be able to track your expenditures. Because in the end, the project director is the person responsible for the successful management of the grant. And so you want to be able to see that information. Thank you, Vincent, for putting that form up. So go ahead and download that form and complete it and send it to that email there. So just a little checklist as it relates to your GAN. Again, you want to make sure you have your login for G6, that you have access to the GAN. One of the things is you want to make sure, you are putting it in a folder or someplace where you can have access to it. It is definitely something, let's say you get promoted or maybe you leave your organization. It is definitely something you want to hand off to your next project director or hand off to your authorized representative to make sure that the next project director receives that GAN. It is a very fundamental document to have for this grant. Again, you want to note your PR number. When you communicate with Donna or the TA team, you want to let us know your PR number in the subject. Really want to encourage you to stay in touch. You're going to have your one-on-one with Donna. If you have any questions, you can also reach out to your OIE technical assistance team and we can assist you with that. If there's any changes with your program officer, you want to notify the program officer of any changes going on with your grant. Again, I know some of you have had a change already in your project director. And that's very understandable. It happens all the time. You want to make sure that you're letting Donna know, and there is a process to change that officially. You want to make sure you're noting your UEI. You've read through all your attachments. Jot your questions down for your one-on-one with Donna. And then you want to, again, check your GAN to make sure you are complying with all the conditions. And again, contact Donna if you have any questions. I'm going to take a short breather and see if there's any questions. None. Okay, I don't see any in the chat, so I'll move on. Alrighty, so we have a tool for you, and we're gonna be working in this tool for a while. And we see this as being beneficial. You are not required to use this throughout the life of your grant. However, we do want to encourage you because it is something that you can, again, like I say, a lot of times staff leave in the middle of a grant, and then it takes some time for the new project director to get on board. And so if you are continuing to keep your information in this planner, it helps in that transition. And so I'm just going to really quickly walk you through this planner. We did send out an email that included a link to this planner and instructions on how you can access this planner if you do not have a Gmail. This is housed in Google because this allows us to have for you to have access to it all the time. And then it allows us to have access. So when we jump on maybe a coaching call or we want to like help you with something, we can see it as well. And then also Donna can see it as well too. And so it's just a really helpful tool. And like I said, it will really help in if you have to transition this to other staff or a new project director. So if you do not have access to this or you're having some trouble being able to access that link, just go ahead and put that in the chat and we will make sure to follow up with you after this event. Oh, I see a question. Chris asks, does that mean we can request for additional funds throughout the grant period? The question is, does that mean we can request for additional funds throughout the grant period?
You mentioned depending on the availability of funds. So it's just an open question we had.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we don't, no, the answer is no. It just means availability. We always have to say that because we never know one congressional appropriation to the next, right? And so availability of funds, it's kind of a catch-all. I wish that we could add, but what was put in your GAN is you won't be receiving more of that. But that was a great question. I'm glad you clarified that.
Yeah, awesome question. Alrighty. So again, if you're unable to get into the link, let us know and we'll work with you to make sure you have access to that. So the first tab, if you look on the bottom, there's tabs. The first tab is an overview and control. And so this again provides just sort of like an overview information, contact information. It allows you to house your PR number there. Just sort of again, your foundational information. Tab 2, we've tried to put resources that you normally have to access in one place. And so this is a planner. In this planner, you have a tab with resources. As we maybe go through the year, if we have other resources we want to add, we will be adding that here as well. And so this is a living document, both for yourself as well as for us. But it has all of this great information. As you can see, it has the uniform guidance information, the EDGAR, anything, all that's been updated for the revisions that have been recently made. Tab 3 is the GPRA and project measures tab. This is where you are going to be beginning to do some work in right today. We're going to start to work in this tab. It provides information and examples of project measures that are smart. So you can always, again, refer back to this page and some, again, I think important information here. I noticed, I just saw this on the, well, never mind. Then we have the next tab is your budget revision. This is a sample of a completed budget revision that we're going to walk through a little bit and then dive into more at our next event. But this is a sample that you can use. If you look at the sample, there are these little carrots on the top. You see these little orange, they call them carrots, but they're kind of like triangles at the top. If you click on that, it's a comment that will provide some instruction for you related to that box. And so again, it gives you more information. The next tab after that is actually your first budget revision worksheet. And so again, we're going to be working in this, and you're going to be working in this very soon, like probably right after we're finished. So that's a tool that we're going to be using. And so we're going to transition and actually get to using that tool. We're going to jump into your measures and the different types of measures that you have. One of the, if just a little, idea about the next steps for your grant is we really want to help you understand your GPRA measures and make a data collection plan, as well as review and possibly revise your project objectives. GPRA measures are measures that are given with this appropriation, and so everyone has to report on the same measures, and we'll go through those. Your project objectives are objectives that you have created that are right in your grant application. So what we want to do is first have you understand your GPRA measures, and then again, make a data collection plan, as well as review and possibly revise your project measures. So now you want to pull out your planner and open up to tab 3. We're going to go through your GPRA measures. Now, I may be partial, but I think NAL GPRA measures are some really amazing GPRA measures. I think they really get at the heart of your work. So let's go through each GPRA measure. GPRA measure number 1. The number and percentage of participating students who attain proficiency in a native language as determined by each grantee through pre- and post-session assessments of native language proficiency. So again, this is focused on your native language and how you define proficiency, okay? And so some of the questions you have to ask yourself in order to develop a evaluation plan is, what does proficiency mean to you as it relates to your language and the target group you're working with? And then how will you conduct your pre and post assessment? Who will deliver the assessment? What type of assessment? Is it oral, written, online, in-person, individual, small group, performance-based? There's a whole wide range of options for you. And that's why I said I like the GPRA, because it really allows you to define what proficiency is, as well as how you're going to measure proficiency. So it's not prescriptive at all. GPRA measure number 2 is similar to GPRA measure number 1. However, it is asking you the number and percentage of participating students who make progress in learning a native language as determined by each grantee through pre- and post-assessment of native language proficiency. So again, what you want to define for yourself is, what is progress? Okay. It could be a wide range of progress, determining progress. It may be grade level, it may be skill level, it's up to you. You get to define this. And then also how you are going to assess this level of progress. What is your measurement? How are you measuring that? Any questions in those two? Yes, you can fill out the, Andy, I see your question. Yeah, you can fill out the overview and GPRA tabs. Most definitely. This is now your planner. So you can go ahead and work on that. Great question. I just wanted to let you know that we are recording this. And so I know it's a lot. You will have access to the recording after a couple of days after the meeting. All right. So let's discuss GPRA number 3. Now, this one is a little different. What it's asking you to do is to measure the number and percentage of participating students who show an improvement in academic outcomes as measured by academic assessment or other indicators. Now, this is really connected to sort of like the theory around native language instruction. The theory really is that when a student is engaged in native language instruction or engaged in instruction that is relevant to them and has meaning for them, that they do better academically and they have better outcomes academically. Now, for this measure, you get to select your academic outcome. Now, I've seen grantees select a grade level English language. And so all the students that are in their language program, they look at the outcomes of those same students in maybe English language arts, or maybe math, or sometimes some grantees use like their overall assessment. They use a standardized assessment, so they look at their grade level achievements. Again, you get to determine which academic outcome you want to pursue, as well as the academic assessment. What I do want you to be is mindful of what that academic outcome is and making sure you have access to that measure via an academic assessment. We've seen sometimes where grantees pick an academic outcome, but that information is held in a school district and they don't have access to it. So be really mindful of you being able to have access to the assessment so you can collect that data. Again, you can see here the questions you might want to ask yourself, as well as what academic assessments you can use. Okay. And then on to our GPRA number 4. This measurement is a little different. Again, it's based on the theory that when students are learning their language and their culture, something that's relevant and meaningful to them, that their attendance in school increases. And so this measure is measuring the difference between average daily attendance of participating students. So those are the students who are receiving language instruction and the average daily attendance of all students in the comparison group. So for example, if you are delivering I'm sorry, I said Hawaiian language, delivering language in your school, maybe in just one class, like a 4th grade class, during a particular class period, you can, and maybe it's just a cohort, you can take the comparison group would be the students receiving the language in that grade level, and maybe the students who are not receiving language instruction in that same grade level. And you would look at those two groups of students and compare their attendance, okay? Also, you might have, let's say maybe you're an immersion school. So everybody's receiving language instruction. So you might want to create a partnership or find access to information regarding average daily attendance of a comparable, let's say, elementary school. Again, you want to make sure you can have access to that data. I know sometimes attendance data is reported statewide. You also want to make sure that group is comparable. So you don't want to have a comparison group be like your students receiving instruction being elementary and the comparison group being high schoolers. That's not a comparison group. You'd want to have like elementary and elementary. And again, students receiving language instruction and students who are not receiving a language instruction. Keep in mind that the idea behind this measure is to show that students who receive language instruction are more likely to have better attendance and want to be in school. Okay. Let's see what time we have. All right, so I'm going to open it up and just let you folks have a discussion, ask questions regarding any of those GPRA measures. You can come off of mute and we can have a discussion, maybe think through or talk through what maybe proficiency and progress means to you. Anyone have any questions or comments, maybe thoughts running through your head about proficiency? Go ahead. Was that you, Crystal?
Oops. Hi, sorry,
Hi.
and me again. On GPRA measure number 4, the average daily attendance of comparison, 100% of our student population with both the schools that are within this grant will be participating in the language.
Awesome.
So what is the recommendation as far as a comparison group?
Yeah, so is this a school district or is it just like 2 different schools?
2 schools.
Okay. So I would find a comparable school that is not receiving. So we have had like grantees partner with another, like let's say it's an elementary school, another elementary school who's not receiving that language instruction in order to collect the attendance. Sometimes people, grantees they just look at the state attendance and they pick out a school that is comparable to them, and have that be the comparison group. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Again, you want to make sure that you have access to that information. And when you know, normally what you want to do with a comparison group is you sort of want to stick with that comparison group throughout the life of a grant. But we know sometimes, you know, data changes. Maybe one year you had access to it through the statewide maybe portal to that comparison group, and then the next year you don't. We can always sort of discuss that if that happens, but the optimal is to maintain the same comparison group throughout the life of your grant. Any other questions or thoughts? Does anybody already have in their mind what their definition of language proficiency is? And if you do, would you mind sharing that?
Hi, this is Dorothy from Tabram from Navajo Prep. I wanted to put our cultural director, Kevin Boleyn, on the spot to answer your question.
Awesome.
Hello, guys. Yeah, I'm walking across campus, getting to the meeting.
Hi.
But one of the things that we did, we've been changing our assessments and everything. Every year I've been here, so each year it's a new thing. But our goal and how we determine and what we call proficiency hasn't changed. What we want our students to leave with is a lifelong language learning foundation so that they communicate and have complex, intimate conversation with elders and their community. So that's our definition of proficiency.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing. And I see Brandon, you are using the ACFL for your proficiency level and guidelines. That's great. 2 really great I guess like options as it relates to assessment and measures, and where you're getting your proficiency measures from, and how you're going to be measuring you know, proficiency, what that assessment will look like. I know Navajo Prep has been designing their own assessment based on their proficiency, right, Dara?
Yep, that's correct. We have at Navajo Prep, we have a 4-year language and culture class that all students take for Navajo language and culture. So regardless of tribal affiliation, all of our students are taking Navajo language and culture over the 4 years. And we've created assessments that go between, like, for each year of the course, and those assessments are given to determine pre and post proficiency. But then we also use our tribal ed department, which is the Department of Diné Education, has a bilingual seal of proficiency. And so that's almost used as a form of external assessment. The other thing that Kevin's done, and I don't know that he gave himself enough credit, is working with the International Baccalaureate to ensure that the structure of our courses aligns to this kind of international framework for assessments. And so we use college professors who are teaching Navajo language and culture and have them do what's called external assessments. So they're providing assessments to our students, assessing their students' work outside of the classroom environment. So we get kind of a non-biased kind of perspective, and that's a way that our students are able to continue to work. Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. I mean, just in that explanation alone, we can see like how you're defining progress and even sort of the operating. How do you operate and manage that assessment? How do you conduct the assessment with those external assessors and the external validation of the assessment through these other processes?
And
Awesome.
if I can just say one more thing for especially all the new grantees out there, Mr. Boleyn, Kevin's position was created in our first NAL grant. So we're really excited that we were able to take him from the classroom, put him into this leadership position where he was able to build out all this curriculum. And now that we're starting our third NAL grant, we're really excited to now take a lot of this work for language and culture and infuse it into the rest of our courses. So it's been an incredible learning journey. And if you're overwhelmed or intimidated about some of the requirements, I really believe there's no more supportive department than the Office of Indian Education to help you work through these kind of requirements. They've really helped us to develop a strong understanding of how to implement these grants. So don't be worried to ask these guys questions. They've worked through a lot with us from the very beginning.
Awesome. Thanks, Dara. And I see Kevin put his email in. Again, an awesome resource, very, developing curriculum and assessments on the ground, really helpful. And then I see, Brandon, your proficiency is based on ACFL, so I'm guessing you also use ACFL for assessments, for your assessment, is that right?
Well, ACFL doesn't have an assessment per se,
sorry.
but it's the national language guidelines for proficiency levels. And I was just typing, haven't sent it yet, but for people that are new and looking for something that doesn't necessarily exist in your language, ACFL has a series of can-do statements that are based on the various proficiency levels. And so you can use those as sort of markers on what your students are able to do with the can-do statements based on the proficiency level.
Yeah. And so, Brandon, what type of assessment do you use?
Well, in our previous NAL grant, we worked with Avant Assessment and we developed a stamp assessment or stamp test in UPIC. And that goes up through grade 6, which is where our eldest group of students is. And then we also have another assessment, which is called the World Speak, also through Avant Assessment. So we worked with, they're the testing company, but we worked with local teachers and elders, not only in my district, but in another district, to provide the language and cultural content to the assessment.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Brandon and Dara and Kevin. I think very fortunate to have you folks. Lots of knowledge around assessment, development, the process. I think Brandon talked about bringing in elders and language and teachers together in order to be an integral part of assessment creation. If you don't have an assessment already, thank you guys for sharing. Any other thoughts or questions?
If I could just add one more thing.
Yeah, go for it.
So every state now has a state level seal of biliteracy. And that's typically for high school students at the time of graduation. Every state is a little bit different though, but One thing that is an ongoing conversation across the country is how to assess native languages, so that those students can also obtain the seal of biliteracy. So if your programs are at the high school level, and you don't, well, I guess what I'm saying is, the general consensus is that working with elders and different tribal entities is an appropriate way of, quote unquote, assessing students for their proficiency for the purposes of the seal of biliteracy, which is completely separate from this grant. But I thought I would just pull that out there because
Yeah.
most indigenous languages don't have a quote unquote standardized language assessment that would be created in
Yes.
the Western world. So
Yes. Yeah. And so there's a lot of work going on around with native language programs and developing their own assessments. Thanks for mentioning that, Brandon. Yeah, you're right, Donna. We do have powerhouse NAL grantees in here that are subject matter experts as it relates to native language curriculum and assessment, and also professional development, just sort of the whole gamut. Alrighty, so let's move on. Now that we've kind of had a little discussion, we'll have more discussion about your GPRA, and we'll be touching on the different aspects of GPRA as we go through your life of your grant. Let's go to your project objective revision. So when you wrote your grant, you created project objectives that were specifically tied to your grant application and the program that you wanted to create, the needs of your community. And so you now have an opportunity to do some tweaks. And I want to emphasize tweaks on your project objectives, because they have to remain essentially the same as what was written in your grant application. However, there can be some tweaks. And so let's go over some of the, I think, maybe guardrails around those tweaks. So no changes to the project scope or objectives are allowed after awarding the grant. And so scope really means, may include the number, nature, and timing of the activities and the participants or subject of the grant. The objectives are the goals and strategic purpose of your grant. Revisions that make the scope and objectives more clear, specific, or measurable without changing them as described in your grant application are encouraged, and we're actually going to work with you on that. Any revisions that you make need to be submitted via your planner by October 25th. And again, we're going to walk through that a little bit. And then no revisions will be permitted after approval by your program officer, Dr. Donna Sabus-Burns. So those are some of the guardrails as it relates to budget revision. Now, here are the ways in which you can strengthen your objectives. One is to make them specific. Your specific goal should answer the your W questions. Sorry, wait, hold on. My thing is blocking. Oh my gosh. All right. I can't even see my screen. Sorry about that. Okay. Now I can see everything. It should be specific really means who, what, when, where, and why. Do your objectives answer these W's? Do they answer who's involved, what you want to accomplish, where you will complete the goal, and when your goal will be accomplished and completed? So again, being very specific. The next one is M, making sure it's measurable. And so you should be counting something or showing an increase. Maybe there's a percentage in there. You want to make sure it is discussing how you are getting from point A to point B via something that you can count or measure. Also, when you move on to the A, making sure it's achievable, we want to encourage you to maybe like extend a little bit, but also we want you to be successful and not stretch too far. So really make sure that is within the limits of your grant year, and it is definitely remains connected to your original objective. A lot of times what we see, the question of achievable comes up when you start to think about the measure, when you start to think about the number or what's going to be measured, wanting to make sure that that is actually achievable within the year and given all the other things going on in your grant. Also that it's relevant, that it's connected again to your grant and the scope of your grant. Now that should be taken care of already through your actual, when you wrote and submitted your application. And then of course, time bound. Sometimes we see original objectives from the grant not actually have a time. And so that's another area where we see a lot of revisions being done and wanting to really make sure that it reflects the time of the grant or the time in which that measure will be achieved. So those are some of the areas in which you can tweak your original objectives. And so here's an example of what I mean by tweak. And so if you read here, the existing objective, the district will offer professional development opportunities to create district-wide native language instructional materials and pre and post assessments for the native language immersion and culture courses. So why does this need a revision? Well, one thing is that there are a lot of things going on in this one objective. There's multiple things being measured, even though there's not actually a number there. It also doesn't tell us when is this going to be accomplished, so it's not time bound. And then again, like I said, it doesn't give a specific measure. So it alludes to something that's being measured, but it's not very specific on that number or percentage. And so here's some potential revisions that we could make to sort of address some of these needs. And so you can see here a potential revision. The district will offer at least 3 native language professional development opportunities each year. So you can see right there, we're throwing in a number. And what we've done also is we sort of broken this very busy objective into more manageable objectives. And so actually having multiple objectives in one. So we're breaking them apart because when you go and do your annual performance report, you can only provide one number per objective in your report. And so we need to break multiple measures apart. The other potential revision is by the end of the grant, the district will create native language instructional materials for grades 3 through 4. So you see in that example, we're putting a time. Again, we're getting real specific on grade level and who we're addressing and being more specific. And then on the third example, you can see there, again, really targeting the pre and post assessment and also including the time. Okay, so those are some examples of potential revisions. So where do you do all this work? Again, what I shared with you earlier is that your revisions will be submitted via your planner. And so if you look here, if you look at your planner on the tab labeled GPRA and project measures, you'll see one row that says original project measure. Original project objective 1. What you're going to put in that row right there and the space provided is the objective from your grant application. So you can just pull out your grant application, copy that objective and put it in there, okay? Then what you want to do is underneath there, the row right underneath, it says revise SMART project measure. That's where you're going to go ahead and put, make that revision to your original objective. And you just sort of work through all of your different objectives that you have in your grant application. All right. So what you want to make sure, again, pull up, for right now, you can go ahead and pull up your planner, take a look at it, locate your grant application. And what you want to start doing is moving your project objectives from your grant into your actual planner. And then you want to review that. Now, I really want to encourage you, if you have a team working with you, maybe, you know, your fiscal team, your other, maybe you have a project coordinator or a curriculum developer, this is a good time and a good exercise to pull everybody in so that they are aware of the project objectives and what they're responsible for. And so you really want to go ahead and do that. Again, these are due October 25th through your planner. We are always open and available to help you work through this. In our next event, we're going to provide a lot of work time for you to like work together and have us there to assist you in revising that. But you really should, by the time we have our next event, you should have at least inputted your project objectives from your grant application. Okay. If you have any other questions or you want to find resources, again, you can go here to tab 2 and find additional resources as it relates to your project objectives. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, this is Brandon again.
Yeah. Hey, Brandon.
Is the slide deck and recording going to be sent out? And
Yeah.
and also, can you maybe send also just a little like checklist of to-dos with deadlines?
Sure.
Or like-
Well, here, I'll let you know the first deadline. The first deadline is go to your grant application, find your objectives, and put them into the rows that say original objectives. That's the
Yep.
first deadline. And the deadline is prior to our next meeting next week, our next event on the 18th. Because we're going to be spending a lot of time. You're going to actually have work time to work through this. And our goal is to see if we can't get those completed and ready to be approved by Donna.
All right.
That's the first one. I'll get to the second one when we finish the budget. Is that cool?
Yep.
And I'll make a note on that, Brandon, to sort of highlight that in the email.
Thank you.
Okay, so next we're gonna move into budget. Are there any like other questions, concerns? I'm gonna check the chat. All right, we'll move on. So again, in this tab 2, we have a bunch of resources. As it relates to your budget, you really want to go and check out, if you have any questions about budget, you want to check out in that blue highlighted column, says regulations. There's Edgar, your 2 CFR. Those are really the regulations that as it relates to your budget and expenditures, anything having to do with allowable costs for federal grants. So again, that's a very foundational document. We have here, again, highlighting the statutory and regulatory requirements. Those are all links that are in your resource tab. We're going to just sort of give you the cliff notes on some of these very important financial pieces of information. We're going to go a little bit over allowable costs. So first and foremost, costs must be necessary and reasonable for the successful performance of the grant. So for example, if you are doing a language program, you probably won't be having costs associated with construction, for example. You probably won't be having that as a cost of this, the grant, because it's not allowable. Secondly, costs should be allocable to the grant. So this means that the expenses that can be traced directly to the activities of that specific grant. What you'll hear again and again from both your TA team as well as Donna Sabas-Burns when you go to request maybe a budget revision is for you to provide justification as you make changes to your budget that directly connects to the activities of your specific grant. And so you will probably have to show justification, including your project objectives and making sure, again, it is connected to your activities. Another really crucial aspect is that costs must be authorized under other applicable laws or regulations. And so again, we have all of that information in those links in your resource page regarding those laws and regulations. Also, you need to remain in compliance with any policies and procedures, financial policy and procedures of your own organization, including any local and state guidelines, in addition to your federal guidelines. Finally, proper documentation of all costs is really important. This means keeping thorough records, receipts, and other forms of evidence to substantiate and justify your expenses. You want to make sure you are bringing your financial or your budget team on board. You may, if they're not attending today, you might want to make sure that they receive this training so that they are aware of their responsibilities. By adhering to these 4 key criteria, you'll be well equipped to ensure that the costs incurred in your grant are indeed allowable and compliant with grant regulations. We're going to go really quickly over the code of federal regulations. Again, this is in your I think it's the 200 uniform guidance. I can't remember what but it's in your resource page. And you can look and actually see this language there. The information provided in your code of regulations outlines the criteria that costs must meet to be considered allowable under federal awards. They must be necessary and reasonable. We talked about that already, for the performance of your federal award, and be allocable under these principles. They must conform to any limitations or exclusions set forth in these principles or in the federal award as to types of or amounts of cost items. So for example, that has a little to do with an example in your budget is the difference and the threshold for when something is determined a supply versus equipment. And I really want to encourage you to check out our YouTube site. We did have a training, and maybe I'll just make a note to get that out to you at our next meeting regarding the revisions to the uniform guidance, that some of those threshold amounts have changed or will change on October 1st. So you want to make sure you're reviewing that and checking that out, particularly when it comes to supplies and equipment, as well as your audit threshold. Letter number C is be consistent with policies and procedures that apply uniformly to both federal finance and other activities of non-federal entity. Again, that just alludes to making sure you're following all the laws, federally, state, local, as well as your own policies and procedures. Continuing on, you really want to make sure that you are accorded consistent treatment. A cost may not be assigned to a federal award as a direct cost if it's being incurred for the same purpose in like circumstances and has been allocated to the federal award as an indirect cost. So if on another award you are allocating it as an indirect cost, you want to make sure that it is budgeted consistently in this award as well. You want to be determined in accordance with the general accepted accounting principles. So that's GAAP. Your budget or fiscal person should be aware of those principles, except for any state and local government or Indian tribes that may use other forms of accounting systems. Not be included as a cost or used to meet cost sharing or matching requirements of any other federal finance program in either the current or prior period. You want to make sure all your costs are adequately documented, as well as your costs are incurred during the approved budget period. So again, you want to make sure any costs you are incurring are within the confines of the current budget period, which for right now is your year one of this grant. So let's take a little closer look at allowability. In considering what is allowable expense, here are some general questions you can ask yourself. Is the expense reasonable and necessary for the program? Is the expense in compliance with laws, regulations, and grant terms? One way you can answer that question, again, is going back and looking at those documents we have in the resource column, in the resource tab of your planner. Another question you can ask yourself is, to what extent is the expense allocable to this grant? Well, again, why to make sure it's connected to the activities of your grant? And is this expense adequately documented? So is it in your budget? Do you have the paperwork to back up the expense? Is it connected to your objectives? Also, you want to look at if the expense is consistent with your own rules that apply to both federally funded and non-federally funded activities. Of course, if you have any question about this or whether a specific cost is allowable, please email your program officer. But again, you really want to first take a look at the regulations as relates to the federal and in order to prepare your questions for Donna. Now let's look at allocable a little bit deeper. Allocable really means the good or service can be assigned to an award or cost objective in accordance with a relative benefit achieved. What that really means is that you are making sure that if cost benefits to two or more projects, activities, or programs are correctly proportional and can be determined with undue cost or effort. So for example, if a project director works 50% on maybe a nature grant and 50% on another project, on a NAL grant, you want to make sure that the laptop purchase for them is allocable to both grants at 50%. So if they're using their computer for both grants, you want to divide up that cost between those two grants and make sure that they are allocated appropriately, particularly if their time is 50-50 on both grants. If you have any of these changes, you must make sure that they are pre-approved. And before I even get into that, what I want to really encourage you, and Doris talked about this, is that you have OIE is a very engaged and supportive grantor and funding agency. And so I really want to encourage you to be in conversation with Donna and your OIE technical assistance team throughout the lifetime of your grant. Now, Donna's got a lot of things going, and so it might take her a little bit of time, but giving her a heads up about any changes that you may want to propose, setting up a discussion with her before you even get to submitting a grant or a budget revision is probably a smart idea. Coming up with your list of discussion or questions you have for her in preparation for any changes you want to make would be a really fantastic idea before actually going in and completing a budget revision. So these changes must be pre-approved by Donna before you even spend any money in these areas. So if you are having any change in key personnel, if you're having any change in like project engagement, participant support costs, or anything having to do with subawards, you want to make sure that you are talking to Donna about this. I want to encourage you again, do not spend anything until you have an approved budget revision. If you are making any changes, you want to make sure it is you have an approved budget. Because if you go ahead and spend money and it is not an approved cost, you will be responsible for those funds, but it may not be able to be, you may not be able to use your OIE funds for that. And so that may put your organization in at risk. And so here again is your budget revision form. You can find that budget revision form in your your planner, and so we want to encourage you to use that. We've also created this sample in there, and I'm going to switch for just a bit. Actually, I can't. Let's see. We can walk through the different parts of this form. And so what this form should really reflect is what you have on your grant application budget. And so if you look at this first, well, we'll start from the top. So you should have your grantee name at the top. Again, this is your PR award number. And so if you put that PR award number in your first tab on your overview of your grant, the first or second tab, in your planner, you'll already have access to your award number, your PR award number, then your grant program, and then your project director. You want to take these budget categories directly from your original budget from your application. Right here in this sort of like salmon colored column, this is the exact numbers from your original budget that you submitted with your application. Okay, so that is, you can see a little description of what that should be. And then in this first green column, you're going to start to talk about any changes you want to make. Now, why would you be making changes to your grant budget? Well, one of the things is you may or may not have received the entire amount requested. And so you might want to like look at, you might need to change that up. The other thing, it's been some time since you actually wrote the grant. And so maybe some things have changed. And so this is an opportunity to update your budget. What needs to be consistent is that this, when you get to this next column, total revised budget, that bottom number needs to be the number reflected in your GAN. So it needs to be that total amount that the award for this year, okay? In this, I'll go back to the middle column. In this middle column, you can see I put there's a minus under instructors. So what that means is that we're reducing that amount, this $90,000 amount that was in our original budget by 22,000. So in order to reduce that amount, you have to put minus and then put the 22. Because what happens is in this third column, it'll auto calculate for you. So you don't really have to do anything in this third column. And so if you want to add funds in, then you just go ahead and you, like you see here under room and board, if you add, sorry, if you you see the original amount was 1,200, they're put in 1,200 again. And what that does is automatically adds the 1,200 to the original amount. So if you want to add, then you put in the whole number. If it remains the same, then you just leave it blank, or you can put in a 0. But again, this third column auto calculates. Now in this last column here is where you provide your justification for any changes. And you want to make sure again that you are, providing the full amount, any kind of justification of why you're making that change. So for example, here, this amount stayed the same because it is going to be virtual, but however, they were going to be coming to a grant academy, and so that was remaining the same. So there was a little bit of a justification in the switch. Okay, and we're going to go into that more in our next session. So, sorry, for your homework, what Brandon had mentioned, for our next session, what we'd like you to do is go through your original budget and fill out that salmon colored, both the first column and the second column. So the budget categories, complete that, and the existing budget, complete that. Again, where are you finding this information? You're finding this information from your original grant budget that you submitted with your application. Are there any questions? Just check a little bit. See if anybody has any questions. Nope. Okay. Alrighty. Well, again, we will be having our next session on the 18th. You should have received a an invite. If you have not, please let us know and we'll make sure to send that to you. Oh, shucks. Wait. Sorry. And what we should have is, I'm gonna launch an end of event poll. It's a real fast poll. We'd love to get your feedback since there aren't any other questions and we're nearing our time. Again, let us know if you have not received the invitation. We are gonna be going back to your planner to do work, and you're gonna have some pretty good, some substantial time to actually work through this. And then on the 19th, we will have another session. Won't be as long. It'll be sort of like if you have any questions, you can come and go as you please. And the goal is really to get your project objectives ready to be reviewed by Donna, as well as any budget revisions you want to do, ready to be reviewed by Donna. In between the time, if you have any questions, please let us know and go ahead. Did somebody have
Hello,
something?
I know, you mentioned something about the 18th and the 19th. Are they the same sessions?
No. So the 18th is actually, we'll be doing work, be delivering some content. You folks will be working together. On the 19th, it's more of, if you have a question or you need some help with something, then we'll be there to workshop it with you. And once you're finished, you can leave.
Oh,
Does that
okay.
help?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
They're
Yeah,
both
you're
at the
welcome.
same time on both days, right? At 9 a.m.?
They're actually, I have the Eastern time, so you're getting the changed time zone. They start on the same time, at the same time. However, on the 19th, we're shortening that time so that you don't have to stay for two full days. And
Okay.
on the 18th, that time has been shortened as well.
Okay.
We'll be sending you reminders.
Yes.
Just to so you'll have it close farther up on your email chain.
Okay, sounds good. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, awesome. So in this time between now and the next event, or even after the next event, you can always reach out to your OIE technical assistance team by emailing us at oie@seiservices.com. As well as if you want to schedule a coaching session, we do one-on-one support for any of your coaching needs, as well as we also have 1-hour sessions. Sometimes people use this to sort of think through ideas, particularly at the beginning. We do a lot of discussion around like your objectives, and then also a lot of questions or working through your assessments that you'll be developing, or your evaluation process in order for you to be able to report on your measures. So that's a lot of the conversations we have, like in this time as you're starting a new grant. The other common questions are around your budget. So any of those questions, please reach out to us and we'll get back to you. If you have, again, any questions or want to contact your program officer, Dr. Donna Sabas Burns. You can go ahead and there is her email. And reach out to us. Also, you can check out what's going on with OIE as well as the broader Native educational landscape by connecting to OIE at their Twitter or X, I should say, sorry. Oh, such hard, old habit to change. You can follow us on X at OIE Indian Ed to keep up to date on the latest information. That's all I have for you today. If there's any questions, we have 3 minutes remaining. I'd be glad to take any questions. If not, you have your homework, and we will be sending out email and sending out the recording and connect on YouTube as well as the slide deck. Thank you all. It was great to spend time with you today. We'll see you next week.